Here's a list of serious. Oh my god. Here's a list of careers that I've given serious thought to. Or plus 2 does equal 4. For years, I've been bouncing between a bunch of different careers, and for a lot of people, a job is just a job, and that's totally cool. Software is a great example of a job that has great pay, good job security, good work-life balance, and those are all great things to have in a job. For me personally, I can get unhappy if I don't have a lot of time doing the thing that I'd really love to be doing, and I always think it's great if you can find a day job that you can really identify with and put yourself into. So over the last year, I've been working hard to figure out the perfect method to figure out your perfect fit for a job, and I finally cracked it. So here are some templates that I've tried and didn't work. Template number 1, run with your passion. So I'm graduating college and I think all I want to do is just put down some fire bars and just make some music. And this was a bad move on my part. I'm glad I did it, but this is a bad move. The reason why following your passion on its own is not really a great move is because you don't have a lot that's monetizable there. And I know for me, all I was interested in was becoming some kind of superstar with it. And I wasn't interested in things that were a little more realistic in that subject matter, like being an A&R or being somebody that gigs at restaurants. For me, it was just all or nothing, and that wasn't really the smartest. Template number 2. So I received this book as a gift about a year ago, and I really liked it. In this book, Mark Manson puts forward a lot of really interesting ideas, but one of them is that you should choose your problems. Don't choose the benefits that you're running towards, but choose the issues that you're going to have to deal with. For example, if you're somebody who doesn't mind catering to unreasonable requests and being a little bit on the clock all the time, then you might be good as an A&R. Or if you're somebody who's good at communicating really complex information and being patient with it, maybe you're awesome as a teacher. But pick the arduous work and the challenges that you're willing to put yourself through, because that's what's going to bother you at your job. Ultimately, this is not the template that I went with because I feel like it's a really negative way to frame things, which might work for other people, but for me, I'm a very joyful kind of person, so it's not ideal for me. Template number 3. Imagine what you're going to be like when you are 30, 40, and 50, and so on. What do you want your life to look like in the long term? So a friend of mine sent me this template after speaking to somebody who's a little bit older, and there's some really fantastic guiding questions on it. So I would say things like, I want 4 adopted kids, and I want to be at the top of my field. I want to be known and recognized in a certain way. I ultimately did not like this template because it's hard to conceptualize what you're going to be at 30. I barely knew what I was going to be at 22 or 21. Template number 4. 80,000 hours. This is a website I stumbled onto sometime last year, and they have terrific career profiles. The argument being you should spend the 80,000 hours on average in your career doing something that helps people the most. And the way that you can do that really depends on you. What is your best fit to do it? So if you're somebody who's a fantastic fundraiser, you shouldn't go and become a teacher. You should just stick at fundraising, or vice versa. And I should note here that this movement of effective altruism is under a little bit of fire with everything happening with FTX, but it's still a very interesting idea. And besides all of that, they have incredible career profiles on many different options that I didn't even know about. So I think this one was great. I ultimately did not like this template fully because I felt that it framed things too much in the altruism movement, which is fine in a very noble way, but I noticed that I was almost deluding myself to think that that's all that mattered to me. Template number 5. This comes from the science of well-being, which I've mentioned before, and the concept of a flow state. A flow state is the sense of mind where you get into a certain piece of work and you just totally lose track of time. It's like hours and hours later, and then you realize that you've still been doing that thing. And it's argued in that course that the more time you spend in that kind of flow state, the happier you'll be. So people usually say that they're happier at rest and not having to do anything, but science has shown that we actually like to do work. The content of that work is what matters a lot. Ultimately, did not use this as my template either because it felt a little bit minimizing. So I'd love to take that element, but that couldn't form the entire template for me. So even though with these five I didn't completely adopt the template, I think each of them have a really important seed to show. For example, with running with your passion, you can really isolate what you like to do, and you probably already know what that is by your early 20s. Something that you spend time doing and nobody tells you to. So it could be something creative, something athletic, just something you really enjoy. From the subtle art, choosing your challenges I think is a really important idea. So looking at the kind of work that you like to do and figuring out how that can best fit. Connecting that idea with what we know from the Yale course and flow state, finding work that you really enjoy that other people might not enjoy doing, that really puts you in a frame of mind of just letting the time pass by and getting into it. From the think about what you want to be when you get older framework, and from 80,000 hours, thinking about how you can best help people with the time that you have, you can start to add in these elements. So things that further your long-term plans, but also help people around you. So the template I ended up going with was something I've spoken about a few weeks ago, which is the concept of Ikigai. Now, there is a pretty big distinction between the template that I ended up using and the actual concept of Ikigai, according to one of my Japanese friends. So the actual concept is not necessarily an amalgamation of different elements or anything to do with a career. It's more of something that revitalizes you. So at the end of a really awful day, something that you can come back to and do that just brings your energy back. That's close but different to what I ended up going with. This template is something that somebody sent me, and it has a few factors on there, some of which are something that you're good at, something that you love, something that will help others, and something that you can be paid for. I've altered the diagram a little bit just to add extraneous values that you might have along with this process, and we'll talk about how to figure those out. This is internal discovery. So what I've coined here as internal discovery, I feel like is the most overlooked part of this process usually, and that's really getting to know yourself. There's a lot that flies under the radar, and it's something that you can only really do once you get a little bit older, maybe cracking into your 20s, and start to observe yourself. Now, we often have the wrong ideas when it comes to defining ourselves because we think along the lines of what we should be as opposed to what we actually are, and looking at the habits that we actually exemplify. So when you do this process, I really encourage you to be as non-judgmental as possible and be super honest with yourself. Along those lines, I really recommend journaling. I do it a ton. This is my current one. Been going through it. And it's mad funny because it's like, damn, bro, you have a diary. But yeah, what helps about this process is you have nobody to be accountable to when you write to yourself. So if you do this a little bit every day, you really get to know yourself and you can be fully honest in ways that you usually can't be with other people, or at least the ideas of what should will not leak into your process here. If you're having trouble just having stuff come off the dome, I actually wrote a bunch of questions that helped me in the past, and I'll put them out here. And these are all questions along the lines of observation rather than shoulds or what you would like to be. It's totally fine to have those goals in addition, but it's really helpful to know what you actually are on the daily. So for example, through this process, I was able to learn that I actually value stability and long-term wealth a lot, and probably a lot more than I would like to. But it's really helpful to know that because I won't be deluding myself in the future when I put these plans together. It's something that maybe I can temper a bit, but it's good stuff to know. Something else I also learned is that I love to be creative, which is something I always kind of knew, but when I saw it in front of me in hundreds of pages worth of my writing, and I saw that I kept mentioning the things that I was working on and the things that I would like to do, that's something that really revealed that this is not just something I'm a little interested in as a hobby, but something that is critical to my sense of self. And that has helped me out a lot because it's given me the confidence to be brave with what I want to jump into. I'm not recording this part later in the day. You are. So something really important with this process is to cut down on your unknown unknowns as much as possible. And those are the things that you don't know about, that you don't even know that you don't know about. One thing that was hugely beneficial in this process was putting myself in as many new experiences as I could. So about a year ago, I started traveling extensively, and I had no idea how much I was going to love that. I'm so glad that I pushed myself to make that jump and find out that actually I really did like it. I also tried as many weird foods as I could, and not all of them hit, but plenty did. It was a great way to discover what I really enjoyed. Something else that was really beneficial for me was getting into the workforce really early, pretty much right after graduation. I think as opposed to pure internal or external discovery, your fit in a workplace is something that's hard to obtain any other way than just experiencing it yourself firsthand, especially if you're somebody who's young and hasn't hit that stage of your life yet. It's really critical to have that experience yourself, and then you'll have something to compare other experiences with, or the experiences of your friends as well. So part three is external discovery. So while you're figuring out yourself and figuring out what makes you tick, you can also be on a fact-finding mission from other sources and other people. So one really amazing network for me was the friends of both of my brothers. My brothers are about 6 and 9 years older than me, and that was really helpful for me because I could see what I wanted to be doing maybe 5 years down the line, and through people who had been making a career change and could give me a lot of insight on what they were doing before and what they would like to be doing next and why. I'll put up some questions here that will help you out a lot, but in general, if you hit somebody up and say, hey, can I just talk to you for maybe half an hour? Would you be free for a call sometime? I'd really appreciate it. 99% of the time, they will say yes, especially if there's somebody you know through family. Oftentimes, I've had to go through LinkedIn, and here's a process that you can use to do that. Essentially, just using LinkedIn's advanced search features and figuring out exactly who you want to be talking to. Once you actually get them on the phone, there's a lot of things that you can ask them. A question that I really like to ask is, tell me about your Thursday. So what did you do from hour 1 to hour 9 of the day? That's a really useful question because it gets away from any jargon and business specific lingo that they might be using, and instead just gives you a really concrete play-by-play of what their day looked like. It also lets you know what challenges they might be putting themselves into and whether you might fit with those challenges. I also like to ask about people's frustrations at their job. What do they wish they could change from there? That gives really good feedback as opposed to what's good in the job, because they usually talk about what's good in the job, and that's a very crafted answer, as opposed to what they don't like in the job. That shows you what the realities of the job are and the things that might put you off. I think through this process, I was able to learn about a lot of career options and even industries that I had no idea about, and the realities of each of them, so I could see whether I would be a nice fit for those jobs. So I really recommend talking to people as your main source of information because you'll get really personal insights that you can't get elsewhere. But I would also suggest places like 80,000 Hours and other sites that have really detailed career profiles that you can go through. When I started on this process, I was being a little neurotic, so I made a web scraper that pulled every career profile article from 80,000 Hours, even the ones that they had hidden for some reason. And that was really useful for me to go through all 200 or 300 or so profiles just to skim through and see whether something was interesting for me. Once I did, I went through each of those and I said, okay, maybe this is a good fit, maybe this is not for me, and this is definitely not for me. And that really helped me to shorten my list down while having that comfort that I had really exhausted the list and I wasn't overlooking any of my options. So for example, something I learned from that external discovery process is that even though I have the temperament for front office finance, it's not something that I actually want to engage with. Whereas the creativity in tech product management, that really spoke to me, and the entrepreneurial spirit of starting something yourself, that was really interesting for me. Ultimately, I found that it was the qualities that those jobs embodied rather than the jobs themselves that I was really interested in. The idea of ingenuity, creativity, and being very original to put forward something that people really like. As a side note, talking to people directly gives you a really nice opportunity to leapfrog to people in their network if you'd like to talk to them. So something I do really commonly at the end of calls is say, thank you so much for your time. This was super helpful. And I mentioned something specific that was helpful from the call. And then I say, if you know anybody who is doing X that they're not doing but somebody else is, could you put me in touch? And 90% of the time they will, because they're very nice people. That is it for part 1 of this series. I'm going to drop a part 2 next week that shows you how I applied all of this to my own life and what answers I got from it. So I'm really excited for that. That's going to drop next Friday. If you found this helpful, please let me know, because I'd love to know. And if you didn't find it helpful and you feel like there's something big I missed here, definitely let me know, because I would also like to know that. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next Friday.